Hi, this is Brian Oliva at Getsemani Music. Today we're going to explore system calibration routines on the Moog One. There's been very little documentation as to what's needed or how you actually do any of these system calibrations. If you look in the paperwork that came with firmware revision 1.5, there's only 2 or 3 lines dedicated to it. It does say that for system calibration, you're going to need a multimeter, 3 1/4-inch audio cables, 1 1/4-inch stereo TRS to a dual mono TS cable, which is also called an insert cable, and that's it as far as equipment needed. Beyond that, it just has 4 steps to just show you how to get into the menu and start the calibration, but it just says basically to follow the on-screen prompts to complete it, and doesn't define or give any more detail as what any of those steps are, exactly what you have to do. So this will be new for all of us, and we're going to give it a shot and see what happens. We'll start by going into the settings and scroll down to the bottom so you can see utilities. And then we're going to press and hold the Shift key and the settings key, and then tap the More button in the polyphony section. That'll make the calibration line item show on the menu. So we'll select that and then select System Calibration. And we'll start with CV Out. Press the encoder, and we get to the first test section. This first test was by far the most confusing for me. The only instructions say to use a multimeter to monitor the DC voltage output of each CV out, use the encoder and soft pot to calibrate +5 volts and -5 volts for each by adjusting the corresponding DAC value. So we're just going to dive in and try to figure it out. Since we're starting with CV1, I'm connecting a 1/4-inch cable, just a tip ring, to CV out 1. And I'm setting my meter to 10 volts DC. And I'm just going to try to hold the leads down to the tip and ring on the opened end of the cable. If the meter swings negative instead of positive, the leads are backwards, so you can either throw the switch to reverse polarity or just switch the leads. But I needed to start by trying to figure out how things are set. So in one position it shows output plus or minus 5 volts. On the other one it's showing a value for whichever thing you're highlighting on the display. So we're set to the high value of CV out 1. And I notice by default the high value is minus 100% and the low value is plus 100%. So by trial and error I tried to find out which combination of having the leads there and turning the knob, which one would adjust the voltage so that the percentage stayed as close to plus or minus 100 as possible, because it wasn't clear which way to go. So after going back and forth a few times, I realized that the high value was showing on the meter at almost 6 volts, more than 5 at any rate. And I found that by turning the knob I could get as the percentage increased from minus 100% up to a minus 82%, the value of the voltage on the meter was dropping slightly. So I continued to fine-tune it until I got it down to exactly 5 volts. One other thing I found out is that as you switch back and forth between the plus or minus 5 volt values, it doesn't always seem to change right away. I'm still not 100% clear on what I did, but I would just keep messing with it for each value until you find the one that's adjusting it properly, so that minor changes are just changing the voltage slightly, and you're still close to either plus or minus 100%. So when all was said and done, my high value ended up being about 82.5%, my low value down around 94.9%. And going back and forth and checking it, that kept it at exactly 5 volts for for each combination. Moving on to the next step, we're going to go to CV Out 2, move the cable from CV Out 1 to 2, and turn the encoder to go down to the next line, starting with CV Out 2 on the high end. And basically we're just going to repeat what we did for CV Out 1 until we get 5 volts plus or minus for both high and low. Moving on to step 3, CV Out 3. We'll move down to the next line, and don't forget to switch out the cables and plug it into CV Out 3, which I almost forgot to do. And when that is complete, we go to the last one, CV Out 4. Once again, move the cable to CV Out 4, and repeat the procedure one last time for the final CV out. When you've completed the procedure for all 4 CV outs, just press the Next button at the top of the screen, and we move to the next test. Per the instructions, we now connect the CV Out 1 to CV In 1, and CV Out 2 to CV In 2. When we've connected the cables properly, we press the encoder button to start the calibration. This test only takes a minute, and you should see values populated with a high of about 5 volts and a low of about minus 5 volts. A successful test would be close to plus or minus 5. Calibration's finished. So now we go on and hit next to go to the next test. For this one, we connect CV out 1 to expression in 1, CV out 2 to expression in 2, and CV out 3 to sustain in. Once the cables are connected properly, just hit the encoder button, and again the test begins. For this test to be successful, you're looking for high values of about 5 and low values of about 0. Calibration's finished, so we hit next to go on to the next one. For this next test, the main left output is connected to CV in 1 and the main right to CV in 2. Once the cables are properly connected, hit the encoder to start the test. I wanted you to see an example of what happens if a test fails. So in this case, I have reversed the two cables from where they're supposed to be. I ended up putting main left into CV2 and vice versa. So the results are questionable. For most of these tests, we've seen values of either 0 or 5. In this case, for the left side, both values are coming out somewhere in the middle. We've got 3.9 on both of them. And on the right side, it's showing 0. So this time when the test is complete, it shows that calibration failed, and it wants you to press the encoder to retry. But before we do that, we're going to reverse the cables again and put them in the proper positions and see what kind of difference that makes. Now that the cables are in the correct position, we press the encoder to redo the test. And this time the results are more of what we would expect. High value of 5, low value close to 0, with similar results for the right side. And once again, the calibration's finished, so we hit next to go on to the next one. The next test requires a special cable. This one has a stereo plug at one end with a TRS connector, and it splits into two mono TS connectors. The black one is labeled as tip, the red one as ring. For this test, we plug in the stereo jack into the right headphone jack. The tip connector goes into CV in 1, and the ring connector into CV in 2. We press the encoder to start the test. And when calibration's finished, we press next to go to the next one. This one is kind of interesting. The first thing we have to do is turn all of the front panel knobs to their mid position. The display will help guide you as you do this. You'll notice that for the left and right panels, all the sections have a corresponding label. And as you reach the mid position, those labels will turn from a darker color to a lighter one to know that you've accomplished it. Once everything's in mid position, just hit the encoder button and that'll send the position calibration. Then hit next and we go on to the next one. This is similar to the last one, only this time all the panel controls have to be set to the high position. Once all the knobs have been turned fully clockwise, press the encoder button to send the position calibration, and then hit next. This next section again is similar to the past, only this time all the knobs go to the low position, or fully counterclockwise. Once they're all set, once again press the encoder button, and that finishes that calibration. Then hit next. Now we calibrate the pitch wheel, mod wheel, and guide knobs. For the first test, they all go to the low position. Because the pitch wheel is spring-loaded, you have to hold it down. Press the encoder to send the data. Now turn the encoder to select the mid position. And then adjust the pitch wheel, guide knob, and mod wheel to the middle position. Press the encoder when it's sent. Turn the encoder to the high position. Adjust the knobs accordingly, and remember the pitch wheel has to be held up because it's spring-loaded. Press the encoder to finish, then click the back button. You're back to the list. If you scroll down through it, you should see that all of the calibrations have been completed, but the important last step is to select Save Calibrations and hit the encoder one last time. Once Save Calibration shows is done, you are finished and everything should be totally calibrated. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to our channel and see you next time.